This conversation took place on one of the biggest days in Rochester history. It's 1954, the day Thomas Watson Jr. announced that International Business Machines, or IBM, was coming to Rochester. Rochester would never be the same.
Mr. Watson, we're delighted with the news that you brought to Rochester today, the news that IBM is planning to establish facilities here. We're all interested as to why you have selected Rochester as a site for a new plant.
Well, Ray, I can't tell you how delighted IBM and all of us are at the prospect of being neighbors to all of you here in Rochester. I think we picked the site because it's within 300 miles of the center of our market, and our people think that it's the nicest town within that 300-mile radius for the location of an IBM plant. We found unusually fine recreational facilities here, unusually fine educational facilities, and I think unusually fine people. The fact that it coincidentally is the residence of some very close friends of mine, the Fiegel family, was one of the things that made it particularly delightful to me. For the last time I was in this town was back in 1942 when I came here to visit the Fiegels.
Now, in order that we might get some concept as to the size of the plant, could you elaborate on the acreage of land that you have purchased and perhaps the number of buildings and the total cost of the facilities?
We have almost 400 acres, and I'm delighted to say that we've been able to get all of the land that we need. We expect to start in with an initial investment in buildings of about $8 million, and just how many buildings that will comprise, I don't know, for the building hasn't yet been designed, but it'll probably be a one-story construction and probably take in a fair amount of floor space.
How many people will be employed with your IBM facilities here in Rochester to begin with?
Well, Ray, we would think around 1,500 to begin with. We would hope that before the plant is up, we would have a pilot operation where people who we employ would get used to the type of work we'll be doing in the plant to make a nucleus around which we can build our total employment.
What percentage of the 1,500 would you say would be professional engineering people?
Well, engineering and administrative should take in about 20% of the 1,500. Or 300 people, roughly.
Basically, the employees will be male, isn't that correct?
Well, that's a statement that you won't trap me into saying yes to, sir. The employees will be male and female, though I do think that many of the jobs in our business are of the type that do not lend themselves to female application. There will be both male and female, but I would say that the jobs would be predominantly jobs for men.
You also have a school type of system with IBM, I understand, in which you instruct your own employees in the use of your complicated machines and also customers. Could you elaborate just a bit on that particular program?
Yes, the machines that we make are quite complicated, and we have to make them operate simply in customers' offices, and so we find the easiest way to do that is to bring customers and our own employees into centralized school facilities in each of our plants. We have a school building in Endicott, a school building in Poughkeepsie, and one of the things that we will first build here in Rochester will be schooling facilities for that use.
All right. Well, thank you very kindly, Mr.
Watson,
sir, for your kind cooperation.
Appreciate your time and cooperation.
Fine. Thank you.
Right.
And now we have another guest with us here, Mr. James Clark. Clark is Commissioner of the Department of Business Development for the state of Minnesota. Mr. Clark, I know that you certainly are pleased with the news that IBM is coming into Minnesota.
That certainly is an understatement. The state of Minnesota shares with the people of Rochester this feeling of extreme delight over the developments which are now in prospect. As I have just told the governor of the state of Minnesota, and he and his part will soon be telling the people of the state of this great commonwealth the developments that are now immediately in prospect constitute one of the major steps in the business history of the state of Minnesota. And we appreciate so much the kind words which have just been expressed by Tom Watson Jr. as to the reasons which motivated this splendid enterprise coming to this community.